Welcome back to our channel. In the stillness of the late afternoon, the corridor outside Sharon's room stretched endlessly, the muted hum of the air conditioning and the distant thump of a door somewhere else in the house offering a hollow soundtrack to the scene unfolding inside. For Anita the moment was a single searing frame of revelation, one she would never forget. She had come here quietly, on a tip that Vernon was meeting Sharon under the guise of business papers, but nothing could have prepared her for the raw betrayal that greeted her. She froze at the threshold and remained there, anchored by the weight of what her eyes revealed. On the bed lay Vernon and Sharon, hidden beneath tangled sheets, their limbs intertwined in a slow, deliberate embrace that spoke of more than comfort. Vernon's hand traced a line along Sharon's back. Sharon's face was turned toward him, her expression unguarded, trusting. The scene exuded familiarity, complicity, intimacy, and for Anita it translated into betrayal. Anger flared first, sharp as a blade. Her heart pounded in her chest, its rhythm echoing in her ears. How long? How deeply? How far did this go? The air around her stung as though every breath she took carried the residue of deception. Time slowed. She saw Vernon's hand linger, saw Sharon's eyelids crease in a half-smile, a look of contentment that once might have been reserved for Anita. And with each second, the ground beneath Anita's world cracked a little more. A torrent of inner conflict swelled inside Anita. She had built her life around Vernon, his ambitions, his promises, the vision they shared of stability and prestige. She had believed in the strength of their foundation. Now she found that foundation rotten from within. Why had she ignored the signs? She thought. Why did she allow doubts to fester instead of confronting them? Guilt mingled with the hurt. As much as Vernon's betrayal cut, so did her passivity. She saw the years of subtle dismissals, evasive phone calls, Vernon's late nights at the office or with partners, and she realized she had accepted them, rationalized them, because she believed love or loyalty would suffice. The anger matured into a simmering rage. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it dissolved all trust. Anita's vision narrowed, her senses sharpened. She smelled the faint perfume Sharon wore, a signature scent that Vernon had once claimed was just something from a business contact. She saw the wrinkles of the fabric beneath Vernon's hand, the thoughtless way Sharon rested a palm on his chest. It wasn't just the act, it was how comfortable they looked, how accustomed they seemed to each other. That dismissed every apology he might ever make, every promise he might still whisper. In a flash she understood the stakes. If she voiced what she had witnessed, she would ignite a family war. Vernon's reputation, the company he oversaw, the legacy they maintained, all stood precariously. She realized that by holding her silence, she could preserve the facade for a little longer. By speaking up, she risked collapse. Her internal voice screamed, "Speak. Expose it. Stop the lies. Save yourself." Yet another voice answered, "Lie low. Protect the image. Don't give him the satisfaction of watching you crumble." The duality hammered at her, protect the family or protect herself. Stay in the marriage and pretend? Or walk away and admit everything had been a lie? Meanwhile, Vernon felt the shift in the air. Something in the hush of the moment changed the dynamic. He had been so sure of control, once a master strategist, a man who could handle financial crises, boardroom battles, public perception. He was strong, decisive, untouchable. But when Sharon's bedroom door swung open and he saw Anita's silhouette in the light, everything pivoted. The confidence drained from him. He realized that in this moment he was less than powerful, he was exposed, vulnerable. Inside, he felt panic, not panic of being discovered for an affair alone, but panic of loss of empire, of identity. Vernon had always convinced himself that what he did was for the greater good of the family and the firm, that a few compromises here and there, a sidestep there, didn't really matter. He told himself, it's business. But now the lie crumbled. The sight of Anita standing there, silent, furious, shattered the illusion. He had risked it all for something frivolous? For a sense of escape? For validation? And now he stood at the edge of ruin. As the seconds stretched, Sharon sat upright. She glanced at Vernon, then at Anita. She looked betrayed, but not the way Anita felt. Sharon's gaze flickered with calculation. She knew Vernon's vulnerabilities, she knew what the moment meant for Anita's world. In that split heartbeat, the roles shifted. Sharon was no longer just the seduced, she was the one holding leverage. Anita sensed that. She realized this wasn't just about the act, they had planned this far beyond a moment's indulgence. Vernon's hand moved to Sharon's hair, Sharon's lips parted in what might have been the echo of a secret conversation. Anita trembled. Anger took over. Her vision blurred. The air around her pulsated with adrenaline. This ends. She made a decision in silence. In that instant she became something else, a woman scorned, a force of reckoning. She didn't speak. She didn't move yet. She let the adrenaline wash over her until the pain sharpened into clarity. Her mind replayed the years, shredded by deceit. She remembered Vernon's earlier deflections, the work trip, the client dinner, the odd phone calls shut off. She remembered telling herself those things were fine, because love, because family, because trust. Now she saw they were cracks. And they were widening into chasms. And she thought of their daughter, their legacy, fragile now. She thought of the company, the public image, the empire that had been built on a facade of unity and control. All of it trembling. In that moment Sharon rose, calmly smoothing the sheets. She reached for the glass of water on the bedside table. She stood, and half turned toward the door, but didn't retreat. Her eyes locked with Anita's, and for the first time Sharon seemed to recognize that she would never just fade to background. She would now be part of the reckoning. Anita stepped forward. Each stride measured, deliberate. She crossed the threshold. Vernon's head bowed, the man who had lorded over boardrooms and lunches and speeches now shrank before her. He looked old, not in years, but in defeat. The smile he might once have had for Sharon looked now like a mask slipping. Anita felt both pity and wrath. She knew she had power now, not because she held the evidence, but because she held the truth. Vernon tried to stand, to raise his voice, but nothing came. His heart thudded, a loud, raw sound. The empire he controlled now felt pointless. He realized that his identity had been built on the idea that he was untouchable, above reproach. But now he sat exposed, and the reckoning had arrived. Anita reached the bed. She bent slightly, her eyes fixed on the scattered documents on the floor, papers that Vernon perhaps used to rationalize, or Sharon perhaps ignored. She picked up a folder and flipped through. It wasn't what was written that mattered, it was the symbolism of it. The written word versus the betrayed body. She saw numbers, wires, meetings, names. She looked up at Vernon. "So this is what you chose." She didn't speak. The accusation hung heavier than any shouted words. Vernon sat, silent. His mind raced backward, the moment he signed the contract that forced the family company into an awkward merger, the phone call with the board when he lied about a delay, the dinner where he feigned exhaustion. He'd rationalized each, told himself he was protecting them. Now the facade collapsed. He knew what was next. Anita could walk out, file for divorce, tarnish his reputation, or she could stay and watch him fall. He wasn't sure which terrified him more. Sharon stood beside the bed, arms folded now. The triumphant look on her face was subtle, a tilt of the chin, a steady gaze. She watched Vernon, not without satisfaction. But she also looked at Anita. She understood that Anita's decision here would define more than one marriage break, it would define her own standing in this war. In the hush that followed, emotions churned beneath the surface. Anger for Anita, at herself, at Vernon, at the betrayal. Fear for her future, the unknown beyond the marriage, the ruin of all she built. Shame for the silence she had upheld, for turning a blind eye. For Vernon, guilt at the lies, fear of exposure, resentment that he had slipped so far. For Sharon, satisfaction at victory, but anxiety about the power she now held, and the price she might yet pay. The house itself seemed to watch. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The moment would become a pivot. Nothing would be the same. Every smile, every handshake, every board meeting, every family gathering would now carry the weight of this betrayal. Anita walked away from the bed, leaving the folder on the nightstand. Without looking back, she stepped into the corridor, each footstep echoing louder than expected. Behind her, the door clicked. Vernon remained seated. Sharon followed a moment later, but left the room. In that silence, the world shifted. The triangle had become a battlefield. The lines were drawn. There would be a storm. Later that night, Vernon sat in his study, the blinds closed, the lights dim. He pressed his face into his hands. The rage inside him battled the shame. He thought of the empire he led, of the public face, or the wife who once trusted him. He wondered how deep the wound was. Could he repair the damage? Could he salvage anything? He doubted it. The betrayal was physical, emotional, moral, and now visible. And for the first time in decades, he didn't feel like he held any cards. He felt exposed, at risk. Anita, in her room upstairs, lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep eluded her. Images of Vernon and Sharon haunted her, the touch, the betrayal, the comfortable ease. She had so many questions. She had so many decisions to make. But she felt something else too, a flicker of empowerment. As hearts break sometimes, walls crumble, and something new can arise from the wreckage. She resolved not to become a victim. She resolved to reclaim her story. Sharon sat in her own apartment, scrolling through emails. She had taken control, but she knew her position was dangerous. She had crossed a line, now she must navigate the fallout. She thought of Vernon, of Anita, of the family foremost. She thought of herself, of ambitions that once seemed harmless but now were loaded with consequence. She wondered if victory tasted like ash. In the dawn-gray hours, Danny walked over the bridge in the estate's courtyard, the dew cool under her shoes. She didn't know the full truth yet, but she sensed a fissure sliding beneath the family's surface. She felt for her father, for her mother, for the legacy she had grown up believing in. She felt for herself. She realized how fragile the things she cared about were. She realized the legacy might be built on ruins. Thus the narrative tumbled into darker territory, the clean veneer of family, of power, of reputation, shattered by mutual deceit, the internal wars raging behind polite smiles, the characters boxed in by their decisions, betrayed by their trust, haunted by their ambitions. This single moment, Anita's discovery, inflamed the entire structure. Every character now stood at a crossroad, and no one would emerge the same. In time, some would retaliate, some would break, some would flee. But for now the storm gathered, and in its heart lay the truth Anita found. In a bed that was once a place of rest, she discovered the battlefield of hearts, the war of loyalty, and the collapse of a legacy built on illusion.